Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
I'm glad you survived the bear attack.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Glad you survived Congress. And reporters.
You make it look easier this way, yeah.
All right, so you put out this tweet on August 4th. It says, it seems like every time we learn new info about the Biden family's corrupt business deals, Biden's two-tier Justice Department goes after President Trump again. So this has happened 3 different times. Every time that Trump's been indicted, it was the day before, there was something about the Hunter situation. With that said, you said you're going to do an impeachment inquiry into Biden, but are you looking at maybe an impeachment inquiry also into the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland? Instead?
No, the one thing we did do when Washington changed, remember, America decided they wanted a difference in Washington. And on those very first days, there's some things we changed. We made members now have to show up for work. We opened up the Capitol to the people. We made committees actually work where bills go through it. People get to read the bills now, 72 hours, American public, before it's passed. But one thing we did create was a weaponization committee. We created a weaponization committee, select committee. We created one on COVID to find the origins of COVID. We did one to understand what really happened in Afghanistan. And we did one for the select committee on China. And that weaponization we had watched time and again, and it wasn't just this situation, it was the thousands of Americans who lost their First Amendment rights that we're finding now, where the government went into Facebook, went into Twitter. We didn't know that at the time. We had inklings of it, and we're learning more and more every day. Now, about the pay-to-play for the Bidens, we didn't know all of what transpired, but what do we know now? Now, having followed and pulled on the strings, we now know that the Biden family created 20 shell companies when Joe Biden became vice president. We know that the Biden family got 16 of the 17 payments from Romania while he was still vice president. The president told us he had nothing to do with the Biden family's workings, but now we found out through the partner just last week that no, he literally called in. He had dinners, and after the dinners, the Biden family got a new Porsche. They got $3.5 million wired to them. So things seem to be happening here. We also found out where President Biden told us that his family got no money from China. We now know that, yes, they did get money from China. We now know that the FBI, from one of their most prominent informants, was warned that they were told a number of years ago that they had to bribe Joe Biden. So this just raises a lot of questions. We now know that Attorney General Garland has said one thing in the investigation of Biden, but the IRS whistleblowers say something else happened. So what we're trying to find is who lied and what are all the truths. An impeachment inquiry is not an impeachment. It only empowers Republicans and Democrats in Congress to be able to get the answers they need.
Now, I get getting the answers, but if you go further into those questions, does that divide the country even further? And what about the constituents here in Kern County? Is that what they want?
Well, the one thing I would tell you, I would never want to divide the nation. I want to unite them. And what's interesting to me, as a member of Congress, if you were told, having not known any of this before, that an informant the FBI has says Biden has been bribed, that the president said he had nothing to do with the businesses, but now we found out he did take action and he got paid from it. You have IRS agents who have been stellar individuals come through and say they got treated differently, the Biden family. I mean, anyone that's ever been investigated from the IRS, have you ever let the statute of limitations run out on what they're investigating you on? The government itself? No. The rule of thumb is even if you get close, you have to extend that. So what's concerning to constituents, regardless of where you are, they just want answers to the questions. They don't want a pay-to-play system, so if that's not true, show us. They don't want a government that goes after people simply because of their political beliefs. We want an equal justice. You know, Congress is directly across from the Supreme Court, and there is a statue there of Lady Justice. She's blindfolded, she has a scale, and it's supposed to weigh evenly. That's the way I want to represent my constituents. Fairness.
Does all this have an effect on your relationship with Joe Biden and the executive branch?
I just talked to the White House today. I don't let them get in between because I don't put my thumb on the scale politically one way or another. You've never heard me, you've always, when I've been asked about impeachment, that I will never do that for political purposes. I will only follow the Constitution. And you've watched when we've had difference of opinion, I'm very straightforward that I think we spend too much money. I think the Democrats in adding $6 trillion brought inflation. There is philosophical differences we have, and that's healthy, and we should debate those. But I know first and foremost, I represent the Constitution and the people of the 20th District, and that's what I'm going to do.
You have a Quinnipiac poll came out over the weekend, said former President Trump would win an election by 47% today over Biden at 46%. Is there another way forward besides Trump or Biden? Who would you pick? Do you have somebody?
The American people get to make that decision. But the one thing is I've watched this Justice Department under Biden go after his political opponents, it only makes them stronger. I also see that the American public gets to see that the policies under President Trump made our country stronger. Remember, we didn't have inflation, we were economically stronger, we were energy independent, people earned more money in the process, what they were able to bring home, but around the world it was safer and stronger. We didn't have a war in Ukraine. How we got out of Afghanistan under Biden brought 13 new Gold Star families, but we just watched 5 American embassies have now had to be evacuated under President Biden. So our world is not safer, it's actually a weaker position in America. So I think that's why you see President Trump beating President Biden, but I think that's also a reason why you see him using the Justice Department to go after him.
And to follow up on something maybe locally here in Kern County, it seems like we're facing issues when it comes to water storage, wildfires, and some of our roads as well. How do you work with state government and also with the Biden White House or just other members of Congress on the other side of the aisle to help alleviate some of these challenges that we're facing right now?
Well, when I was fortunate enough to be elected to Congress, there's a number of issues I started. One was Lake Isabella Dam. And I was in the minority. We actually just got to do the ribbon cutting and got that finished. I had to work with 3 different administrations. We've watched water be a big issue. I was able to work across the aisle with Senator Feinstein. What's really damaging about this, here we have a very wet year. Had we been able to finish that out, what the real problem was Governor Gavin Newsom. He literally fought the federal government when they had bipartisan support, even to raise Shasta Dam just by 6 feet. That is the greatest return on the investment. Let us store the water we have now instead of that fresh water going out to the ocean. This is a real problem that Gavin Newsom has fought us all along the way, even when we had bipartisan support in Washington, to stop. That's why we don't have the extra storage today, that we would be in a much stronger position in the future for California. Then when you look at energy policy, we've watched Gavin Newsom fight the energy policy, where he has shut in wells in Kern County. But you know what he did to replace it? Not that we would use less. He would buy 50,000 barrels a day from Putin. He gave money to Putin to actually have that war against Ukraine, while we could have had the oil and gas produced in Kern County that created more California jobs in an environmentally sound way. And a very concerning issue that I have is, if we were able to replace just the natural gas in Europe from America that Russia supplies to them, we would have lowered CO2 emissions by 218 million tons. That's just in 1 year. But you got people like Gavin Newsom funding Putin and his wars and denying California from being energy independent. He literally shrunk the grid. And then when we had a warm summer, he called up the old coal facilities in LA that produced more emissions. I've got a bill that's bipartisan to help save our giant sequoias because of the management of the forest. We've watched these fires burn 30% of the giant sequoias. They grow no place else except on the eastern slope of the Sierras in California. And we're able on a bipartisan basis to come in, clean some of that out to save them for the future. I would hope Gavin Newsom would change his ways and start working with us, especially in the federal government, when I'm able to find solutions working across the aisle.
What would you say about jobs then? Biden says that he's created more jobs in his administration than Trump's administration. That's coming off of the pandemic, however. But you fight along Gavin Newsom as he's taking away jobs in oil and some in agriculture. How do you, as our congressman, try to bring back jobs in California?
Well, again, I'm fighting uphill when you deal with California. That's why for the first time in California history, we actually lost a congressional seat. We're supposed to maybe lose 5 more because people are leaving the state. Why? High taxes, hard to produce, hard to raise your family from the same perspective, crime rising as well. These are the policies that the Democrats have fostered and have taken over. What I find is bring back the common sense. Find a way that I can work across the aisle to put the people before politics. And the one thing we have found with Democrats in Washington as well, now that we're in the majority, the thing that I do is listen to the public. We put out the commitment to America. Watch what we were able to do. We combated the Democrats when they wanted to decriminalize carjacking and murder. The president said he'd veto it. At the end of the day, when I put it on his desk, he signed it. Watch what we passed H.R. 1 to make us energy independent. Passed the Parents' Bill of Rights so they have a say in their kids' education, right? We were able to put a border security bill to stop the fentanyl coming across into America and killing our children.
Immigration, only way that changes is law in Congress. Is there something, you guys have a majority, Republicans have a majority, is there any way that you can come with a compromise that would allow the Senate then to go ahead and approve?
Well, that's a great question, because if you look at this Congress, we have passed a border security bill. So the Senate has the ability to take ours up or produce another one. We've been in office for 6 months, about 7 months now. So measure this Congress versus the last Congress. When Nancy Pelosi was in power and the Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, this new Congress has passed more bills, created more law, even though the Democrats control the Senate and the president. So we must be producing some really good policies to be able to get it through. The real challenge is the Senate hasn't taken up much. So we've got a lot of good bills here, from border security, energy policy, Parents' Bill of Rights, and education, that we hope the Senate would actually take them up.
And to follow up on bringing up former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, you've also both met with leaders of Taiwan. You've also met with several foreign leaders. How important is it to show, I guess, leadership from your position and to meet with foreign leaders from Israel to Italy?
I think it's very important. I was honored to be able to go to Israel and speak at the Knesset, only the second speaker able to do it, but on the 75th anniversary of the creation of Israel. You know, America was the first country to recognize Israel 11 minutes after it was founded, and I just believe that was very important. But the difference is, you see the difference in style. I believe in opening up the Capitol, that members have to be there, that bills have to go through committee. Nancy Pelosi has a different position. She thinks all the power rests with the Speaker, people should vote proxy, bills don't have to go through committee, that she kind of knows best. The style in which she would go to Taiwan, she went to Taiwan not with a bipartisan group, it's just with a few Democratic members. And what was the purpose there? I think it gave China advantage, allowed them to do a military exercise around Taiwan. I had the president of Taiwan, she came to America. I met with her with a bipartisan group of Republicans and Democrats, a large number, at the Reagan Library. The symbolism of showing America defeating communism, having that bicameral, bipartisan conversation with a foreign leader gave a greater strength to Taiwan and to America, but gave greater strength for freedom. What is the purpose? The idea of freedom. You know, you cannot have peace without first obtaining freedom. It's normal that you want to have peace, but you can never get it without attaining freedom. And that's really the purpose of how you should go about having foreign leader meetings.
And just to follow up on that too, I know that it's maybe a stark contrast between yourself and former Speaker Pelosi. Is it also a contrast to President Biden as well, to show that maybe that, you know, he's not necessarily most popular as far as the polls are concerned? Is it to show that maybe there is an alternative for American diplomacy around the world?
Well, America has to lead. America's more than a country, we're an idea. And you got to understand the strength of that idea. So when we were able to have a new majority in the House, one of the first things I did was sit down with the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries. And I told Hakeem, I'm going to treat you the way I wanted to be treated. Everything doesn't have to be partisan. But America is stronger when we talk with one voice. So in creating the Select Committee on China, we're stronger when we speak with one voice. Watch, when that Chinese balloon came across America and President Biden failed to act, he went too slow, and it really showed weakness in the place. The Congress, we actually got together on a bipartisan basis, created a resolution that every single person in Congress voted for, from AOC to Marjorie Greene. And you know the first people to criticize it was the Communist Party of China. That was the audience we wanted to speak for. And I tell you, we were stronger based upon that. I think if you pause for a moment and you put America first, the country will be stronger, and trying to put politics in what's Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats and their foreign policy has done for quite some time.
Do you feel like America's leadership across the globe has faltered?
I feel there's weakness, especially after the decision the Democrats have made on how they got out of Afghanistan. And it's not my opinion, it's what I've heard from world leaders as I've traveled the world talking to them. It actually they have said that pushed them closer to China. We've watched the French President Macron. He had the first state dinner with Biden, but then he traveled to China and literally with the press said, we need to have a closer relationship with China and not always follow America.
October 28th, 40 years, Bakersfield High School reunion. Are you going? And if you are you considered most likely to succeed?
No, I wasn't, but once a driller, always a driller. I tell you, there's no greater education. I'm very proud of the fact my children went there as well. I'm proud of what Bakersfield High has been able to produce and continue to produce.